Hi, welcome to the Needed Discussion. My name is Eric Thomas, and this is my inaugural run as far as doing this channel. And I want to explain what this channel is going to be about. We're going to be just getting on here and discussing certain things and try and talk about it thoughtfully. There's a number of different topics out there that a lot of people like to talk about, hot button subjects, and I like the idea of having, we need to have a discussion about this, that, and the other. We need to do it in a constructive manner. Today we have our guest, which is Jared Bauer. I've been a big fan of his for a long time. Hi, Jared. How you doing?
Hey, Eric, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself because I was going to do the thing where I introduce you and everything, but tell me a little bit about you just real quick and tell the audience who you are.
Sure. I've been on digital media now for over 10 years. I started out as a writer. I created a channel called Wisecrack, which at the beginning, its first couple years, was a series of shows that I was either writing or show running. All of the shows were either about literature or philosophy or the humanities, as that's always been a big passion of mine. And then the channel kind of pivoted to talk more to more of the video essay space, where we talked about movies as well as other topics that are kind of tangential to the humanities. And then digital media industry has gone through some rough times. I ended up selling and leaving the company, and now I'm kind of pursuing my own interests on YouTube, kind of continuing to explore my passion for movies as well as my passion for philosophy. So, I call myself a cinephile philosophy dabbler. And the YouTube stuff is a lot of fun because it allows me to maintain and build relationships with thoughtful people around the world. So it's been great.
Yeah, your first video that I actually saw on Wisecrack, you did a analysis of The Wolf of Wall Street, and I was blown away by it. I was really just like how you framed it. You even akin, the stock market as a sort of religion. And I remember you said, "Okay, yeah, we're going to go there," and you went like this, and I just thought it was really great. Um, and when you talk about getting to know people around the world, if you gather other people's perspectives and everything like that, and I think that plays into, we're all a product of our environment. If you were born in Punjab, India, you would probably be Hindu. So I mean, we're all a product of our environment. So like right now, you're over in Finland, correct? And
That's correct.
yeah, and so the uh, how society runs over there is probably starkly different than here in California, I would imagine, right?
In some ways, yes.
Okay. Yeah, and if you're discussing anything, where you're at, the different opinions are going to be different given where you're at. Um, an item that is in the news a lot these days is retail theft. People stealing things and selling them online, and it seems to me that there is a conversation that can be had as to the ethics of stealing, why people steal. I mean, if people are stealing because they're poor or they're desperate or whatever like that, they need to feed their family, that's one thing. But if they're stealing and then they're selling the stuff online, like on Facebook Marketplace, that should be called out. And, when it comes to classism, and whether or not people are in a place in their life where they can't get higher up on the ladder financially, well, we can discuss why that is. I mean, you know do you know much about uh what is it, the caste system? Do you know what caste systems are and everything
In
like that?
in in India,
Yes, I mean,
you,
people are
yeah,
stuck in their place.
they're completely stuck. Yeah.
And does that mean that people need to stay where they're at? And in our society here in the states, it's not a caste system, but it feels like it when you're working your ass off every day trying to get by, but yet you can't get any further than here because the people up top are keeping you down. And if I ask you a question like, you know do we really live in America, I can't say the word, meritocracy.
Meritocracy.
Meritocracy, sorry about that. Do we really live in one of those? Or I mean, honestly.
Well, I think that oftentimes when we bring up ideas like meritocracy or really any of these kind of big idea label terms, we tend to have to think of them in absolutes. I mean, I don't think an absolute meritocracy exists anywhere. Obviously, the society is more meritocratic than, for example, a caste system in India, where literally there's nothing that you can do. In America, I mean, social climbing the social ladder does happen. It's maybe a little bit rarer than it was than my parents' generation, but it's possible. And now, does this social climbing happen for meritorious reasons always? Again, I don't really have any data to make any robust claims here, but just from my personal experience and from having conversations with other people, that's not always how people win. And so I would say if your standard of living in a meritocracy is that it is only through merit that people climb, then, or rather, it's only through merit that people have advanced positions of wealth, etc., then the answer is obviously no. But if you were to ask, is it more meritocratic than some other uh, societies, then I think the answer is yes. But again, I think that people are a little bit too precious with these terms. I think another one, honestly, is democracy. Do we, is the vote, our votes, the only thing that count in influencing power? Of course not. Now, obviously, that's an ideal that we should strive for. But at the same time, when oftentimes conservative voices are suggesting that, we live in a perfect democracy, they're obviously overlooking, the influence of special interest groups, corporate money, stuff like that. But yeah, in general, I think that when it comes to these big terms, we're oftentimes too precious about their meanings.
Yeah, and I've gotten into conversations with many people when they're worried about the presidency every 4 years. Oh my God, the president's going to change the world or something like that. And I'd say, I don't know if you realize this, but our government doesn't really run things, in my opinion. In my opinion, corporate America runs things. They're the ones that set up how we live. I mean, everything is it comes down to consumer capitalism. Everything we do, someone is trying to figure out a way to make money off of it. This website that we're streaming on right now, the StreamYard. I was talking about it with my wife, and all of a sudden on my Facebook, an ad for StreamYard came up, and
Yeah.
that is fucking frightening. The fact that everything that we're doing, someone is trying to figure out a way to make money, whether it's through data mining or literally selling you stuff by sending you ads. And if we were to talk about how our system is set up, does our government really run things, or does big business run things? I think it's the latter. Um,
I I would definitely agree. I think and this kind of relates back to something that the first thing that you had said to me when we talked previously is you said, correct me if I'm wrong, you said something along the lines of, I'm having trouble picking a belief or something like that. Or you said that, and I'm kind of experiencing the same thing. In general, I think it's very difficult these days to even have a politics. And what I mean by that is that, there are people who are very critical of corporate capitalism. Fair enough. I'm one of those people. It's very hard to really seriously posit alternatives. There are, ways to rein in capitalism, like the Nordic models, which I think would be a responsible but probably very difficult step for America to take. But then there are kind of the more radical leftists who want some kind of revolution, but the idea of that there's really no way to achieve that revolution, and so a lot of radical politics ends up just kind of being aesthetics. And it's just very difficult these days, I think, to really identify injustices and translate that into concrete politics, concrete actionable things that isn't just virtue signaling on the internet in favor of building your kind of personal brand.
yeah, and if it ends up coming down to just entertainment.
Yeah.
People get online and the internet has allowed everybody to become the worst versions of themselves. Just look at the comment sections on anything. Like the Flash movie came out. I enjoyed the Flash movie, and then all of a sudden I see online everybody is just dogging it out really bad, just saying how terrible it is. It's almost like across the board, you can't put something out that people aren't going to shit all over. And that being said, this discourse politically is more just a matter of entertainment. Well, let's see what happens when we say this. If I say that all abortion is wrong, okay, well, let's see where that goes. And I think a lot of times the internet is not really concerned with trying to make a change for the better. They're just trying to get clicks. They're just trying to get likes. Um, and would you say that that's the case, or do you think people is it nefarious or is it genuine when it comes to someone online trying to make a difference half the time?
It's very interesting that you asked this question because I'm actually in the midst of doing a collaboration for my next video with a channel called Carefree Wandering. Are you familiar with it?
Uh,
There's a
no, but I will
philosophy
look.
professor.
I don't. I'll look it up.
So there's a philosophy professor in Hong Kong. His name is Hans Georg Muller, and his work is on identity technologies. And to sum up, his argument is that we live in a age of what he calls prophilicity, and the idea is basically that identity, we are curating and building these brands or identity because we want to be seen as being seen in a certain way, in a desirable way. And so, because of this is the reason why, for example, virtue signaling is so popular because morality is the hero of identity. And it's absolutely important that in this age of mass media, where, in the past, only celebrities really had curated identities that are kind of perpetuated by PR firms. But now social media is like our own PR firm and we have to curate our own identities. And so, one of the problems with prophilicity is that, yeah, it makes it seem like everything, all the social issues that we care about and that we talk about and we post about are adopted inauthentically because we're just doing it for clout or we're doing it for money. But he argues that there's a difference between inauthenticity and non-authenticity. And I'm actually speaking to him tomorrow, and I'm actually curious to hear him expand on this a little bit. He has a great book, by the way, called You and Your Profile that I really recommend. But basically, inauthenticity is if I say something, but I don't really mean it. Non-authenticity is that I say something, but it doesn't really matter if I mean it or not, because it's just the way that we understand ourselves, and the way that we understand ourselves is going to determine how we perpetuate these images of ourselves. And so basically, his argument is that when people, adopt certain beliefs that allow them to gain money, it's not really relevant whether or not they believe it or not. And I don't know if I entirely agree. I think that something like that is dangerous because it definitely casts doubt on, for example, if there's a giant protest against a something that's like a real injustice that needs to be rectified, the people in power may not be swayed by the protest because they say to themselves, you know what, all these people are just doing personal brand building. It's just in the interest of their profiles to be protesting. As soon as some other trend comes up that's going to allow them to build their profiles, they'll stop worrying about this issue and just move on to the next thing. Quite frankly, I think there's a lot of evidence for that. I mean, you see when like the Ukraine thing happened, everyone was changing their profile picture to have like the blue and yellow flag. And then as soon as that became less trendy, I mean, there are no less people dying today than there were in the past. Then they, moved on to the next issue. And I think that can be very dangerous. So my answer is that I think that it's a problem. Although I'm engaged with the work of a thinker who I really respect, and I'm expecting that he may change my mind tomorrow. So sorry if it's this kind of a strange answer.
Well, and I think the average person online that's trying to be an influencer or trying to give their opinion, or even just people that are commenting on stuff, they're schizophrenic. They're all over the place. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to concentrate on this issue right now, and then a day or two later, something else comes up, and they just completely pushed away what they were standing for before. Okay, I'm all in on Black Lives Matter. Oh, well, you know what? The border crisis is a hot button topic right now. So now I'm going to concentrate on this. And people, so if I'm reading right, people will tend to have like just concentration on an event just because it's in the the popularity of the internet at the time, that
Yeah,
they really don't hold a real position.
I mean, think of it like your identity is like a stock market, is like the stock market. You know, as soon as I'm a person, I buy into certain stocks. These stocks are like social issues. I buy into Black Lives Matter. As soon as that thing starts tanking, of course you're going to sell. It's just the game. It's what you would have to do if you are dead set on making a living as an influencer, especially one that talks about social issues. You have to do it, or else you'll end up unable to support yourself. It's one of the reasons why I left, because I can't do that. I mean, you know, I don't think it's because I'm more noble than other people. I don't think it's because I'm more authentic than other people. I just don't really have the psychological grit to go through something like that. I just don't.
Yeah, when I go online and I'm busy looking at different people's opinions, I do respect the person that stays on focus. And I'm not a Bernie guy. I'm not as far as Bernie Sanders goes. One thing that I tend to enjoy about Bernie Sanders is he's been saying the same message for 40 years. He stays
Yeah.
very true to what he is. Whereas a lot of politicians, they'll flip flop back and forth depending on how they feel, what's going to get them the most votes, what's going to make them popular. If I'm a candidate for any kind of office and I have a stance of, oh well, this pen right here is a good thing, and then I notice that in the comment section of the internet, people start hating this pen, I may go, you know what, I used to like this pen, but now I'm going to hate the pen myself. That could be a way of explaining how people change their ways as far as being an influencer, or trying to stay relevant. And staying relevant is your money if you're an influencer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to bring back to what you mentioned about Bernie. And right now, I'm basically just parroting the work of Professor Mueller, but I'm also kind of deep in his book right now because I'm writing about it. But what you just said, like, it Bernie's been saying the same thing for 40 years. What does that say to us? That says that he's authentic. If he's been saying the same thing for 40 years, he really must mean it. But the fact that we're talking about it and we're saying that it is something of merit, something to be admired, something to respect, is evidence of the fact that even being real, like we assume that Bernie is, acts in favor, it enhances his profile. So that's why it doesn't really matter if people are adopting positions authentically, like we assume Bernie Sanders does, or inauthentically, like we would think maybe an online grifter does. Because at the end of the day, it's feeding the same beast, the idea of profile, that we need to be seen as being seen a certain way. And that, enhances our ability to, I suppose, make money at the end of the day, or to perpetuate ourselves.
And even if you're not making money, just the dopamine that happens in your head, if you get 40,000 views on one video, the dopamine in your head, you get addicted to that. Oh my god, it feels so good. I had 40,000 people watch my video. Even if you're not making money on it, just
Yeah,
the confirmation.
it's like the Richard Dawkins thing. He coined the term memes. And, in the same way that we get some kind of a dopamine hit from spreading our seed, like our literal genetic DNA, we also get some kind of a hit from spreading our ideas. And so, yes, you're right. We do get like a kind of dangerously intoxicating hit of dopamine when our ideas are spread, because
The
it's very primal. Even though social media is brand new and all this like digital media stuff is brand new, and the idea that like you or I could sit down in a room and just blah 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 and it reach millions of people, brand new, but it's still, I think, it's pulling very very primitive levers.
and as far as being able to do this, it's been, me and my friends have talked about the how this type of discourse, this type of interaction is taken away from the real world of going to a coffee shop and actually sitting down talking. People are busy staring at their phones more and more and more and more. And supposedly we're more connected now, but I've seen study after study that social media is keeping people away from each other in a physical sense. And so much of their life is online. My son, when he was a teenager, he would talk about his friends online. He would talk about his friends, and and I go, oh, okay. And I thought it was like people at his high school. No, these are friends these are so-called friends from across the country, and he looked at them as real friends. I'm like, are they real friends? I mean, you're just playing video games with them online. Are they real friends? And so this online thing, the social media thing, is it one of those things that's driving us apart physically, but bringing us together maybe on a digital level? I
As
mean,
far as to whether or not they're real friends, I think that as technology changes, as our social interactions change, I think that the require our emotional requirements are also changing. But I hear you. I mean, sometimes I watch old movies, like for example, my wife and I are watching the original Halloween movies with Michael Myers, and sometimes I'm watching them and I'm just like, I get super nostalgic for honestly a time when I wasn't even alive, like I was a baby. But this idea of a of an environment where the only possible social interactions, the only possible communication is just the individuals in your immediate vicinity. The idea of just like living in a, like, when I say quiet, I don't mean like actually audibly quiet, but in an environment where there isn't the possibility of tapping yourself into a million voices at the press of a button, where the only possibilities are those within your immediate community. There's something I think I'm just getting to the age where I'm just completely nostalgic about stuff because that seems so peaceful to me. And it also, and obviously I think there is a level of intimacy that that kind of environment allows that's probably dead today. Now, is it better or worse than what we have where, like I live in Finland, my best friend lives in Texas. It's pretty amazing how easy it is for me to reach him. It's easy for us to be able to interact together. We grew up together, but now, we play video games together. We can spend hours today. I mean, that's pretty cool. That has definitely merits in his own right. Is it the same as us being in the same room together? No. Is it the same as us having to live our lives in the same community together in order to maintain a relationship? No. Uh, but it's hard for me to really say which is better and which is worse. They probably both have pros and cons, and it would take a monstrous study to really determine what's better.
well, I feel the same way. Like I look back at when I was in college, I would go to my classes. I'd make different acquaintances and friends in my classes, and then we would go to a local coffee shop and sit down and have like pseudo intellectual conversations about Nietzsche and God is dead, and sit there and just bullshit our way through a conversation. We're just learning this stuff, but we're sitting there and we think we're like the smartest thing. But what I remember about that wasn't necessarily the conversations that we were having. What I remember about that is that we were sitting there drinking our coffee, interacting with each other face to face, and that doesn't happen too much anymore in my life, at least. And so I do look back on those times fondly. And like right now, we are having a conversation that could easily be done at a coffee shop, and I bet it would feel a little bit better because we're able to sit there in person and be present. Being present in a conversation is something that people have to be taught a lot of times. Online, if like right now I'm having a conversation with you, I'm trying to stay as present as possible, but at the same time, different things on my screen are popping up on my computer telling me that this is going on or this is going on, or I get a text message on my phone and that distracts me or whatever. There is something about technology that keeps people not being present in their conversation. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things in regards to intimacy, that we need to make sure that we stay present. And my brother just told me he had to go through a class at his job to learn how to stay present in a conversation. Is social media and technology and little devices like this so distracting that we have a hard time making those connections that we used to make sitting at the coffee shop?
Yeah, but I think that even if you and I were having this conversation in a coffee shop today, it still wouldn't be the same as if we were having the conversation in the coffee shop 30 years ago. And what I mean by that is like our brains like really are wired David Cronenberg esque to these smartphone devices. The fact that I can reach into my pocket and talk to anyone else, or that I could reach into my pocket and figure out the best route to get home, or what movie's playing next door, like all of these affect my mental processing. All of these opportunities, even if I don't seize them, are still shaping my considerations and shaping my mind. So I really think I mean, obviously we can be more or less present in conversations. It would probably be more like the 80s if you and I were having this in in a coffee shop. It would be more present. But the idea of the presenteeism, if that's the right word, of the 80s, I mean, it's just gone. It's gone.
It's gone. Well, it's funny it's about the phones. Okay, so just the idea of having caller ID on your phone, just the idea of that has changed the way we even think about the phone. Years ago, before we had cell phones and before we had caller ID, when the phone rang, you would run across the house and you'd be in anticipation as to what you're going to hear when you answer the phone. Is your brother going to be calling? Is your friend going to be calling or whatever like that? And you would pick it up, you go, hello, and there was discovery at that point as to who is trying to call you. Now you look and you make a decision as to whether or not you feel like talking to Rich or you feel like talking to, whoever. There is a definite difference as to how we even think about communicating through devices. Whereas if you didn't have caller ID, if you were just answering the phone, you get a genuine surprise every time you answer the phone, and that is gone now. That is
But
gone.
I don't think that's gone. I think that phenomenon is one step removed because when you hear a ding in your pocket, you're like, ooh, who's texting me? And then, you pull it out and then you figure it out. But, like, if you've ever been a teenager and you've ever had a crush, when that ding hits your phone, you got a big dopamine. You're like, oh man, I hope it's her or whatever. So that still does happen, but it's in a different form. And even that, I'm sure, is probably going to be, probably lessened with each technological breakthrough.
Yeah. Well, the minute they put that microchip in our head where we don't even need this anymore, we just sit there and talk to ourselves. Then it'll be all good. Then we'll
Right.
just, we'll
Yeah.
just, we'll just talk telepathically to each other. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But and here's the thing. This channel that I'm trying to create is exactly what we're doing right here. I think a lot of times we need to have a discussion about different subjects, but we need to do it constructively. And like we have different people online, like Candace Owens will take a position on a subject. She'll take a position and fight to the death for it. I think it's more beneficial to not take a position, but just discuss it. If you say, well, let's talk about the border wall, should the border wall be, a concrete wall that keeps everybody out? Or do we need to bring people in order to enrich our society and have our society be more diverse and have different ideas coming in over the border? We could discuss that without getting mad at each other. And that's what I mean by discussing things in a very open fashion. I mean, since we sat down, I haven't taken a position on anything at all. And we're just
No.
talking.
Well, we haven't been talking about super hot topic or really incendiary things, which I'm grateful for. But yeah, I hear you, and those are values that I also feel strongly about. I'm all for more conversation, not less. I'm not really into the claim that people will make that certain voices ought not to be platformed. I'm very critical of that. And I think that ultimately, yeah, you can come up with the best ideas through argumentation.
Are you a fan of X? I have a hard time calling it X. Are you a fan of Twitter and what Elon Musk has done with Twitter?
I've never been on Twitter. I still am not. In terms of what he's done, all I really know is he's loosened the guidelines for what is acceptable and what isn't. And in principle, I'm okay with that. But again, I would still. And I know that he reduced the number of people that are reviewing content. Uh, I'm still in favor of having some kind of a content review process. I don't think it's healthy, for example, for there to be, Russian or Chinese content farms that are just kind of creating these like fake outraged individuals to sway public opinion or sway elections. Like, that's not healthy. That's a violation of free speech of some form. So, I mean, I do think that there should be moderation, and I know that there still is. As far as if it's enough, I couldn't tell you. I'd need to learn more.
Well, I mean, you have people online that have really strange. There was a guy that I read about years ago that had a website that promoted a very crazy idea that as the man of the house, he is allowed to have sex with everybody in the house because he's the provider and everything like that. I'm not making this up. He actually, and the fact that he was crazy enough to do it wasn't as startling as how many people followed this motherfucker. I mean, it's really, really crazy. And so, free speech, I'm all for it. But if you're out there literally influencing people to break the law, maybe you shouldn't have a voice.
Well, there are laws against that. I mean, can't yell fire in a theater, crowded theater, etc. You can't incite people to violence, and obviously, I think all those laws should be enforced. The example that you talked about. Wait, so like if someone came into his house, he would say, "Hey, I need to let you know that if you step foot in this house, you're obligated to have sex with me if I
You're, you're,
want to."
you're free game. If you come in my house, you're free game. Yep, that's the way it goes. Yeah. I don't know. It's been so long ago. This guy was gonna come to my town, come to Sacramento, and hold a convention. And thankfully, the community said, "No, fuck you. You are not coming here. You are not coming here." So thankfully, I wouldn't want that guy anywhere near my community. I don't want that guy anywhere near anybody.
That guy's obviously crazy. I obviously don't agree with what he says. If it was made abundantly clear to anybody who had to enter his house, and as long as nobody required to be in their house in order to make a living or like live life, then I guess I'm okay with him having his own little weird laws. Although I don't know what the legality of that is like. I don't know
I
if you
don't
can
know.
really like. I mean, you can't. I mean, I guess you can. I guess you can like. I mean, I'm no lawyer, but I guess you could demand that someone have go through a process of providing consent before allowing you onto their property. I guess that sounds legal.
Yeah, but the bigger story is the fact that he had all these people following him online. Like, oh yeah, he makes a lot of sense. It's sort of like the crazy person who gets elected. If this politician over here is a crazy person, I'm not concerned with the crazy person as much as I'm concerned with all the people who actually voted for him. Those are the people I'm more scared of. It's like if for myself, if there was a fan club devoted to me, I think I would be a little nervous about those people because I got a lot of weird ideas going on in my head. That's kind of the way I
Yeah.
see it.
I mean, you're right. If I was being really charitable, which I think is sometimes a helpful exercise, I would say that people probably like the guy because people feel very disempowered in their lives, and some people, the only time where they feel like they're in control of their lives are in their home, and maybe in order to have an outlet for their frustrations of being constantly shat on and looked over in their social lives outside of the home, they look to increase the power they have in the home, their one refuge, to a ridiculous extent. I mean, it's still ridiculous. I would want to have nothing to do with this person. But
Well,
I always try to look at the charitable kernel within crazy shit like that. And with that, maybe.
it's not really that crazy. I mean, literally 70, 80 years ago, a man of the house could literally assault, beat up anybody that comes into his house, his wife, his kids, and everything like that. Abuse was horrible, and he was looked at as a man that takes care of his house. My grandfather was horribly abusive to my mom and her brothers and everything like that. And back in the day, he was looked at, oh, you know what? Yeah, he smacks around his kids and his wife, but you know what? He takes care of his house, and it was looked at as a good thing.
Yeah.
That's how crazy things were. So it's it the times have changed for the better, but people they look at different things in different lenses, and you're a product of your environment, you're a product of your time. The idea that you could beat your kids is very much looked down upon now, whereas it was upheld 80 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's just I know we're going off on all kinds of tangents here,
No, it's
but
good.
you know, every good conversation, in my view, has at least 8 or 9 right turns going into a different conversation.
Yeah. I guess the thing about that is like everything you said, I agree with. I think that there's a tendency today for people to say not only have things changed for the better, but I literally cannot believe that anybody thought that was right back then. And I that's where I kind of disagree. I mean, not that like I'm not saying that like what you're describing isn't abhorrent enough for it to warrant enough outrage in me to not believe it. I'm just saying that like there's this there's this philosopher named Ian Hacking. He has this book that's really good. It's called Rewriting the Soul, and he talks about this idea of the semantic contagion. The semantic contagion is like, let's say 30 years ago, there's no such thing as workplace harassment. It's not something that anybody has ever heard of. So obviously that idea is not going to moderate your behavior because it's not ever something that you even thought of. So yeah, you probably see people grabbing women's asses in the office all the time, and you just probably don't think twice about it because the semantic idea of harassment in the office isn't something that would ever enter your mind. Whereas today, it is something that everybody knows about, and because of that, it tempers people's behavior, and people assume that these semantic ideas are just as present in the back of people's minds today as they were in the past, which is why they're not. So judging people in the past is a weird business, and people I
It's
think today are a little bit too adamant about doing it, too comfortable doing it.
Well, it's interesting to go back in time and watch like even movies. I remember seeing this black and white movie not that long ago, and there was these two secretaries in an office, and and one of them was telling the other one about this guy that she met, and she was so excited about this guy that she met, and she described him like this. She goes, "Oh, he's built like this, and he's he just really you could tell that if you stepped out of line, he would put you in your place, right?" And she's describing it in a gleeful way, and the other lady in the office goes, "I really wish I could meet a guy like that." You think about that. That was the time, and that was
Yeah.
how things people thought. I want a guy to put me in my place. Okay, go ahead and try and put that out online now. That hey, you know what? As men, we need to put women in their place. Try and put that out there and see what kind of hatred you get for that. And I'm not saying that they're right. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying it's interesting. If you go back in time and just look at different belief systems that people had even 30 years ago compared to now, you'd be shocked half the time.
Or even you don't even have to go back in time. You can just look at different parts of the globe.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you have whole cultures over in the Middle East, and you know what? I'm not bashing other cultures. That's they do them, but the fact that a woman can't drive a car in some Middle Eastern countries, it seems really really backwards to me. I don't understand it, but if that's how their society runs, who's gonna shame them for it? I guess here in America
Well,
we can't.
I'm relatively comfortable shaming them for it. I don't think we should just retreat to pure relativism. I do think that there are moral standards to be upheld, and yeah, we can say that. Oh well, there are certain circumstances that led to our society develop in a certain way that those circumstances are not present for them, but that's fine. That just means that perhaps if we truly believe that it makes life better for individuals, then you know, um, we perhaps have a duty to, spread that. And of course, I don't mean like any kind of colonialism or anything like that, or any kind of invasion to promote these values. But I definitely don't think that we have to, like, I think we can definitely voice criticisms about things that are not in line with our values, especially if those values are ones that are more humanitarian, more universal.
Oh, absolutely. I think that we could criticize it all day long, but as far as going in and making an entire society change their ways, I don't know if that's our place. I just don't know if that's our
Yeah,
place.
that's a difficult conversation. Like, what was his name? The Christopher Hitchens, man, he was a hero of the left, and he caught so much flack because he took the position to with George Bush during the war in Iraq because he thought that like certain universal standards of free speech, democracy should be forcefully introduced to these countries in order to liberate people, and he lost a lot of support on the left for that. But I read a book about him recently, and he was definitely one of those people who stuck to his guns, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Well, Jared, we're running out of time here, and I wanted to thank you so much for doing this with me. And the needed discussion channel is gonna go in this direction where we have thoughtful conversations and just let the conversations go where they go. I hope you had a good time talking on here. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to plug as long as you're on here?
Follow me at my channel. It's just my name, Jared Bauer, Bauer. And yeah, it's been really great. Thank you for having me.
Hey, no problem. Hey, thanks for coming on my channel and hearing what I have to say about this, that, and the other. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about, and let me know what your comments are about your own comments, and I'll comment on your comments about your comments. And remember that the best conversations go nowhere and everywhere. Be sure to like and subscribe. Have a great day.